So for my last video I just did, I was saying how I am very, very happy with the current direction Final Fantasy XIV's development is going, and that I am just mostly excited for new jobs to be showcased. And for the record, I really do genuinely mean that, as I say in that video. Probably belabor the point, but whatever. But now it's time that I unintentionally stirred the pot, because what I'm going to say in this video, I do mean very earnestly, and it does come from a place of good faith, as I'm going to explain, and it is my opinion that I do believe is grounded in features and faults and things that I genuinely, truly believe could make these great additions to the game. So, in the great words of the cancelled, onwards to cancellation. But, and it's a very big but, if you can forgive me for my heresy, I'd super appreciate if you slapped a Beastmaster Holy Paladin hybrid onto that like button and cat daddied that subscribe button. So rather than speculate and guess on what is going to happen, I'm instead just going to flat out say what I do want to see, because guessing and predicting what's going to happen, that has been done so many times, and I don't think I could add anything new to that conversation. Like, I don't view data mined material, like, I'm useless on that. But my own viewpoints of what I want, I know that I can tell you, because I have actually thought about this, and I do have pretty good insight into what I want. I would really hope. So personally, I do not want to see the widely speculated chemist if it is just another ranged healer. And yes, I can already hear the furious, thunderous typing of 1,000 cancellations going on for this. But that's just me being honest. I have played Final Fantasy since literally the 1.0 days, and we have had the ranged healer white mage back then. Then we had the Scholar introduced as a unique healer that had a rather in-depth DPS priority list, making it more akin to an Affliction Warlock in World of Warcraft, with its damage over time effects, rotations through Bio 2, the different miasma, Shadow Flare, cross-class skills like Arrow and Thunder even came into play. It was a very unique playstyle and a fun experience. It was so different. And we could also control the fairy parallel to our tomfoolery. So we could like be casting like revive, and we could also cast a fairy action at the same time. I know for anyone who has been playing Shadowbringers, they're probably like, what? But this leads to why I am really not happy with the state of Scholar in Shadowbringers. But we could also aim the fairy heals through macros, and so we often talk about how we can like tether the fairy, use fairy gauge, and have it spit out healing on a single target. Yeah, we used to be able to focus the fairy healing onto the target. We would also, there was a macro that I remember was going around where we would have Physic, which is just our like 400 potency heal, but we would also have in that macro the fairy heal alongside that, and that would be our quote-unquote Cure 2 replacement. I've been playing this game way too long, and as a Scholar main back then, like, yeah, we had lots of tomfoolery. But moving on, we got the Astrologian, which had its own unique take on healing, involving a mini-game of card buffs to boost the damage of team members, something that prior to Heaven's Ward was not so much of a thing. Like, we weren't really talking about White Mage and Scholar as buffing teams' damage. To sacrifice such an incredibly large portion of your own personal damage and mental capacity doing that card game to buff allies was never a thing before. And I should say, like, of course, Malefic weaving now is very important. It is very important to weave in Malefics and use your OGCDs between Malefics. But I want to say that it was just unique, but that's not saying that it didn't have problems, because Astrologian was really competing with White Mage when it came out. And we're still feeling that to this day, because they're both ranged healers, and they both function so similarly that, yeah, currently you're having them bash heads with one another, all these healers. And that's a part of the problem, actually, is we have ranged healers that function very similarly. I mean, yes, White Mage's personal DPS Astrologian brings buffs, but at the end of the day, raid compositions are going to definitely favor the one that just brings the most raid DPS, because while the healing components are unique between the two and their playstyles definitely are different, like I can tell you I prefer Astrologian, we are still talking about two healers that are competing in the ranged healer slot. And so you're getting them really butting heads, and currently what we have been seeing lately is actually that Scholar is the one left out, where you're seeing a lot of Ast White Mage comps, and Scholar unfortunately being sidelined. So now when people speculate of a fourth ranged healer, I am like, dude, oh my gosh, please no dude, I really hope that isn't what happens. And I know that that's gonna make people mad, and I'm not trying to be jerk. Like, as I was just explaining, like, we are currently seeing the ramifications of having 3 ranged healers batting heads with one another. And one always will lose out, unfortunately. It was Astrologian for a while, then Astro got buffed, then it was White Mage, and then Astro got buffed again, then it was Astro was the winner, White Mage was left out, now it's Scholar left out. So it comes from a place of very good faith, in my opinion, and I hope that people can see that. But for me, I really want a melee healer. I want something fresh, I want something new, and then everything went silent as a rain of 1,000 billion cancellations happened at once. I'm so sorry. I know. Melee healer? Sacrilege. The absolute depravity, death to the non-believer. But I mean it. I have been playing World of Warcraft during Shadowlands, and to be quite honest, the variety of healers and different playstyles geared towards healing is incredible. The healers play significantly different from one another, and I honestly have had a blast healing in that game. Whereas in Final Fantasy XIV, undeniably from my footage, you have seen me go tanking and ranged DPS and caster. Which is weird, because I was playing Scholar since, like, it was initially released at like 2.0, and then like White Mage since like 1.0. It's crazy to me, actually. So let's take Restoration Druid. It's not exactly a melee healer at its core until you involve cat weaving, where you shapeshift and get into melee range to execute combos and rip apart your opponent in melee range. Regardless, this felt so fresh to me that I literally grinded Restoration Druid randomly for weeks on end. It was so engaging, it was so fresh, and such a fun take on healing. Managing healing over time effects to sustain my party as I went full feral, blasting things to center going I'm gonna leave the sound effect in, that's so stupid, but... Well, let's take Holy Paladin, which is one of the most engaging fun healers I have ever had the joy of playing as, with the Holy Shock, the Crusader Strikes, and just everything. It's so good. It is fast-paced. You are slamming down multiple charges of Crusader Strike, feeding in Holy Shock, throwing out Holy Shock, healing up your party through that. It's just like, oh my god, it feels so good. And their combo feeds into this like holy bar builder spender, where you build up this bar and then you get a big, bursty, meaty, beefy heal on the target, and it is also complemented hugely from their Glimmer of Light playstyle, where their abilities can leave a buff called Glimmer of Light on targets, where your natural DPS rotation can squeak out more healing on targets. Or take the Mistweaver Monk, where you can go Rising Mist's talent and then the legendary Ancient Teachings of the Monastery, and you can sustain your heal over time effects on the party, boosting their duration, while also smashing your fist into the opponent to do additional healing to the targets with Rising Mist and Ancient Teachings of the Monastery. It feels so good. Oh yeah, and the Chi-Ji talent and the Kyrian ability, it feels so good. And now let's get back to 14. While I am not holding my breath, unfortunately I can say after playing World of Warcraft, I want a melee healer. I want it so badly that I am willing to risk going against the general mentality of Final Fantasy XIV with ranged healers in this video, saying I want it. This expansion that stripped away a lot of what makes the Scholar unique and feel special into spamming Broil and keeping up one single target damage over time effect, or in AoE situations spamming Art of War. It ultimately tore away so much of what made Scholar feel unique and special in the 2.0 days. It does not feel good to me anymore, and hence why you aren't seeing much footage of it anymore. But then when I tried World of Warcraft with the Restoration Druid cat weaving, with the Holy Paladin going in there, it felt so different. It was so refreshing. The playstyles were so different. And then even going back onto Restoration Shaman, I was just like, Restoration Shaman is like second nature to me. Like, I feel like I've played Restoration Shaman for years, just because it is so similar to like a baseline white mage playstyle. It really genuinely is. And yeah, but I want to say, like, we do have the 3 ranged healers at this point, which I said was a point of contention, and how we're ultimately getting like one loser in the pack. And this really does raise the question, though, what if melee players, like, what if you have your samurai mains, what if you have your dragoon mains, monk mains, what if you had your ninja mains want to get into healing and something familiar to them? We don't currently have an option to them, and I think that it's a valuable and potentially quite lucrative path to go down if we have a melee healer. And now I want to like start addressing some of the concerns, because people will quickly say that it breaks the meta and that it doesn't work exactly with the current strategies. And that's fine and fair. I totally get what you mean. It's just like, as you have seen in my footage of my videos over the past year with Savage content, it has indicated that we usually have a meta where we have 1 physical range DPS, 1 magic range DPS, 2 healers that are both ranged to make up a roster of 4 ranged. And it's funny because we have said healers, and just in that sentence, even there, I just caught myself doing it. I implicitly assumed 2 healers equals 2 ranged. Like, it was just implicit for me. But here is where I want to show the viability of such an idea, because back then we just implied that we had 4 ranged. Holy Paladin is one of the best examples of a great melee healer, and in practice, with statistical evidence and numbers, I'm going to pull up Warcraft logs and we can see that it is the 2nd most popular healer in the World of Warcraft Mythic raids, which are the highest tiers of rating. It would be like Savage, and then like the last boss would be like Ultimate. I have not done Mythic Sire Denathrius Prog for the record, but I from everything that I've heard from people, it's like an Ultimate tier raid. And then just behind Holy Paladin is just behind Restoration Shaman, which is probably best compared to White Mage, as I said before. But this is clearly showing that Holy Paladin is a force to be reckoned with in raiding. But World of Warcraft has also shown the notion of more challenging dungeons, and so this might be really weird to people. Like, think about it as like you can queue for like an expert roulette, and that's just a dungeon. We don't have the notion of like there being a harder version of like Tamtara Deepcroft, but Mythic is like, it adds layers of difficulty. Like a +1 Tamtara Deepcroft is going to be more difficult than a Tamtara Deepcroft that is like +0. Likewise, a +15 Tamtara Deepcroft is going to be much more difficult than a +0 or baseline Tamtara Deepcroft. So Mythic Plus is what the World of Warcraft community calls these more difficult dungeons that scale up. And so if I go onto a different website called Raider.io, I can see how popular the Holy Paladin is there. And for +15 keys specifically, we're looking at like hard dungeons. Like if you're doing this at a low item level of like 200, you're really good. And I do want to note that the Holy Paladin has to solo heal this dungeon content, so World of Warcraft parties are a party of 5 players, 1 healer, 1 tank, 3 DPS, and so this means that it has to, as a Holy Paladin alone, cover area of effect damage, tank busters, and all the rest is absolutely their problem, and as well as contribute damage likewise. So they are at a nearly 19% representation rate as of me recording this video of all of the healers in +15 keys, and is at nearly the same number as Restoration Druid in 2nd place, who has been hailed as the kings of Mythic Plus for literally years at this point, and literally years, and you can fact check me on that. Restoration Druid is very much thought of as like the de facto Mythic Plus healer. So yes, ultimately melee healers can absolutely stand on their own, and like when all the chips are laid bare, beyond any shadow of a doubt, we can see the statistical information as showcased here that yeah, performance wise it's there. But this is also like, I want to circle back to 14 now. So we were talking about raid strategies, but the raid strategies are currently assuming that we absolutely need 2 melee DPS, which boy oh boy am I hopping on that cancellation train today, but I'm gonna be honest and ask this question. Do we really need 2 melee DPS? Isn't that a little restrictive? Like, I've cleared savage fights before when pugging or with different groups with literally no melee DPS, and like all casters are all physical ranged. Or what about melee, 1 melee DPS? Or who is to say that the current strategies that are formulated around our current knowledge and jobs of the game must be what defines our path forward? The self-same strategies that were made under the implicit, unannounced, unceremonious assumption that all healers would be ranged. Like, I had to catch myself earlier on saying, oh, 2 healers, and then I implicitly was like, that means ranged. And then I had to catch myself on that. Like, why do we have to operate under that assumption? To me, I think that the notion of adding something like a Mistweaver Monk or Holy Paladin or Cat-Weaving Resto Druid would be so fundamentally unique as a take on healing in Final Fantasy XIV, and someone who has been a so-called career healer until this expansion, where I dropped Scholar from my honestly not disgust, but just not enjoying it. I didn't like its changes. I'm just gonna tell you, I need a shake-up. Since like, you see me on range DPS now, and then tank before. Like, I needed a shake-up. And I know, talking to friends in game, in real life, my Discord community and YouTube comments, I'm not alone in wanting a shake-up of healers. And I don't think that's unfair, because currently we have DPS ranging from multiple ranged physical, we have multiple caster, we have multiple melee DPS. At what point in time do healers get to say, I want a shakeup? Because it's just like, if you're a DPS player in a raid team and your roster really allows it, you can go from melee to ranged. And then you're just like, oh, okay, I want to actually go caster. Okay, well, now you can hop onto the Black Mage. Whereas healers don't have that flexibility at all. You're a ranged healer that performs relatively similar to the other ones. And I need a shakeup. Like, I cannot press the exact same press 2 key to apply dot and spam 1 key over and over and over again at range. I think I'm going crazy at this point. But I can say, like, if we got Chemist and it was that exact same way, I think I would, like, cry internally. Not externally, but internally I would cry. So to me, I do want a melee healer, and that's my primary desire, my number 1 desire for a new job. And I know that it's probably not going to happen, which is undeniably going to disappoint me to no end, but I'm gonna stick my head out and say, dude, I want it so bad. Anyhow, this video actually got a lot longer than I thought, but I just want to flesh out this idea really fully. So my second job that I really want is going to be on its own separate video, and as always, if you appreciate this content and can forgive me for my heresy by saying I want a melee healer, please throw a Holy Paladin at that like button and cat daddy that subscribe button. Take care, and I hope that you catch me in the next video.